This is Democracy Watch. Mark, we've got some bombshell news here where Donald Trump spoke with NBC News and refused to rule out the possibility of a third term. I'll put the headline right up here on the screen. He says that there are methods for doing so and says that he was not joking about a third term, but that it's far too early to think about it. So a lot to talk about here, but first off, I want to talk about the legality of what he is trying to do. Can you just explain what it would take, legally speaking, for him to be able to do this?
Yeah, so look, let's first dispel the lies. Like, Donald Trump thinks about this every day. The idea that it's too early to think about it, well, it's not too early to think about it because he has talked about this before. The White House put out that stuff about him being a king, right? His supporters talk about it. Steve Bannon talks about it. So I have a feeling they don't think it's too early to start thinking about. But it is not clear if what they have in mind here is that he runs for a third term, which would clearly be prohibited by the U.S. Constitution. And to change that, to your point, you would need the Constitution to be amended, which frankly is never going to happen. It would require a vote in Congress. It would require the states. It's never going to happen. The second possibility is that what they have in mind is some kind of shenanigans by which he effectively, someone else runs for president, but he winds up president. We can walk through what that looks like. And then the third possibility is that he is essentially just the shadow president. He is not actually the president, but he controls presidential power. All of these would be authoritarian moves. All of these are consistent with Donald Trump's desire to be a dictator and not give up power. And all of them, and I want people to hear this loud and clear, need to be taken seriously. He's saying he's not joking. So like everyone in the legacy media, wake the fuck up. Like, this guy's not joking.
So, Mark, I want to dig into exactly that, this idea that I think this was your third point, that there could be a shadow president. He was asked about the prospect of J.D. Vance running for office and then basically passing the role to Trump. Can you just speak on that? Is that something that he would be able to do, whether he wants to step aside and kind of allow Trump to wrangle his way in that way?
Yeah, so I think this has, like I said, kind of two different iterations. One is, J.D. Vance, let's just say in 2028 runs for president. Let's say his vice presidential nominee is, Marco Rubio, because Marco is the most obsequious, willing to do anything guy in Republican Party politics. And they win, right? At this point, Donald Trump then runs for Speaker of the House. Right? He becomes the Speaker of the House. J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio resign.
Resign, or just straight up, like, they're like, let's just drink arsenic because we got to do what we got to do. When the deity asks us to serve, then we just got to do it for Donald Trump.
Right. So that may sound far-fetched, but that's like one possibility. Now, whether that is legal or not is like a whole other set of things that we can come back to in a second. But that would be one. The other is just a straight out Putin. Remember, Vladimir Putin had term limits back in the early 2000s. And basically, he found someone to run as president. He was the prime minister. Technically, the power was with the presidency, but he wielded power. So, think of it this way. The new head of Doge in J.D. Vance's administration will be Donald Trump, right? He'll just be like a senior advisor in the White House, but he'll be effectively all powerful in the way in which, Elon Musk is, even though I guess now they say Elon Musk is not even in charge of Doge, but whatever, right? So this is all authoritarianism. So we can't get too hung up on who has what title. The fact is that Donald Trump would be in power. And then I'll kick you one more there for you. Laura Trump. Laura Trump. I knew you were going to, I know what everyone's thinking. You thought I was going to go Don Jr. But I think for in Brian's honor, we're going full Laura Trump for president.
That's right. You know what? With the talent she has, how could you not? How could you not defer to Laura Trump first and foremost? With the vocals that she has, I don't know how it could be any question.
It would be her vocals, his political, Donald Trump's political skills, his dance moves, her singing. That would be, that'd be it.
Yeah. We really do live in hell. Okay. I think you brought up the exact right point when you said that Trump himself said that he's not joking. And I think there are going to be a lot of people who look at this and say, look, this is just something that Trump says. It's a distraction. It's to distract from the fact that The economy is tanking right now. The stock market is in correction territory. Consumer confidence is at the lowest point it's been in several years. And so, of course, he's looking for something to distract. And so why not just dangle the shiny thing that, of course, the liberal media is going to fall for and say that he's going to run for a third term, when clearly the Constitution says that it's not possible. But the Constitution has said a lot of things that somehow seem to end up happening. None of these things are self-executing. And so when we say, okay, well, we couldn't possibly have a president come into office when he's charged with a violation of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, it happened. And then we say, well, this guy has, there's no way that he could be covered by presidential immunity because it doesn't exist. It's not in the Constitution. And then it happened. They created this provision out of whole cloth. And so I think we assume that all of these self-executing bulwarks against authoritarianism are just happen apropos of nothing, are self-executing. But the reality has shown us that in instance after instance, we don't just democracy doesn't just work. It takes people actually willing to stand up and do it. And there are a lot of Republicans who are making sure that what Trump wants, regardless of what the Constitution says, regardless of what statute says, that he's actually successful in getting his way.
Yeah, look, I take this deadly seriously because on January 6, 2021, people died. Okay. So I was the lawyer for President Biden and the DNC in defeating Donald Trump in court following the 2020 election. Let me just tell you something. From the moment the polls were closed, the only thing I was told by the legacy media is don't worry. Donald Trump, he'll eventually concede.
Right.
And then he just needs his day in court. And then he just needs a little bit of time. And then let the legal process run. Then the legacy media said, oh, don't worry, there'll be the Electoral College. And by the way, enabled by the Republicans saying, eventually everyone will do the right thing. And finally, after 60 plus lawsuits in which they lost and they lost and they lost, Donald Trump instigated a violent insurrection to try to prevent the peaceful transfer of power. January 6th was not a random day, everyone. January 6th was the day that the Constitution set for, federal law set for the electors to be counted. Okay. The Donald Trump belief, the Donald Trump conspiracy theory of that time was if you prevented the Electoral College the electors from being counted in Congress and being certified on that day, he could stay in office. That there would be no new president, he would stay in office. And so the effort to have that violent insurrection was to prevent Congress from doing its counting that day in an effort to try to prevent this from happening. I am of the view that Donald Trump had no intention of leaving office on January 20th, 2021. And that all of these steps were up to that. And so please, will the legacy media stop telling us that, we're overreacting?
Right.
Because as you say, he will do anything.
It's the same guy. It's the same guy in the same team. The notion that this is going to be a more moderate example of an administration when you have more extreme figures and the same guy who just a few years back incited an insurrection is a complete it's delusional. We are already normalized to the idea of there being violence to keep somebody in office. So inherently within that, we're going to see him try to push the barriers even further. This is what this guy does. And so if we saw him incite an insurrection to stay in office the first time, now that we've become normalized to that, now that the Overton window has shifted to the extent that it has, imagine what he's going to do the second time, especially in light of the fact that he's coming out and saying, I am not joking when it comes to running for a third term. I don't know how much clearer he can make it.
I know, and this drives me crazy because he says to, Kristen Welker, I'm not joking. And what does so much of the media commentariat say?
It's that he's joking.
He's joking.
Yeah. Yeah, look, the notion that you should give Trump the benefit of the doubt when this is somebody who is not a good faith actor is ridiculous enough. But the notion that you should give him the benefit of the doubt when he is literally telling you in broad daylight that he is not kidding about the thing that you then claim he's kidding about really goes to show that our mainstream media is just living on a different planet when it comes to actually dealing with this guy with the urgency that it deserves. So
Now, look, I want to say, just because he's plotting these things doesn't mean he's going to get away from it.
Right, and that's what I want to dig into right here, because we've I don't want now that we've adequately panicked everybody who's watching, I want to talk about what the bulwarks against this are and what we should be doing, what we could be doing. So can you dig into that aspect a little bit of it, because it may feel, I mean, the way that Trump has been able to get away with so much of what he wants to get away with, it might feel like this is just a fait accompli when it comes to Trump. But can you speak on that?
Yeah, so look, the biggest bulwark against this, which is his greatest Achilles heels, are elections, right? I mean, everything we've just laid out assumes J.D. Vance runs and wins.
Yeah.
Right. If J.D. Vance runs in 2028 and loses, then this becomes a very different calculation, right? Then it's not a question of whether he can resign and someone can take his place, or for that matter, if Donald Trump tries to run again and, in violation of the Constitution, right? You still have the bulwark of elections if we have free and fair elections. And I am of the view we are going to have elections. So people ask me all the time, are we not going to have elections? No, we're going to have elections. The question is whether they are free and fair. And when you see Donald Trump constantly attacking our election systems, trying in his most recent executive order to take over elections from the state in many important regards, then you know that he is focused on this because that is ultimately the thing that he fears the most.
Right.
He lost an election in 2020. He lost the popular vote in 2016. And he didn't win by that much, notwithstanding his claim for broad landslides. He didn't win by very much there. And we're already seeing in 2025, and as we head towards 2026, he's very unpopular due to all the things you said and that you cover all the time. And so, we need to be laser focused, everyone, not just on what outrageous thing he's doing here and outrageous thing he's doing there, but we need to really be focused to make sure that we are protecting our elections.
Marc, are you and your team prepared or preparing in the event that a lot of what Donald Trump is saying out loud he's going to do, in the event that actually plays itself out?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, my law firm and I, we are already in court in 46 separate lawsuits in 20 states. Now, you wouldn't know that from what you read in the newspaper, right? Because they're not interested right now in what's going on with litigation around elections. But we're actively litigating, and that will pick up as we get closer to 2025 and 2026. And that's going to be really important work, as will be the work of campaigns. Look, this all starts, I hate to say this to folks, but this is all going to start on Tuesday in Wisconsin, right? We're going to see whether or not Elon Musk's money and the Republican disinformation machine is able to take control of a state Supreme Court in Wisconsin. That's critically important. So I hope everyone votes there. But these, the litigation and the other things to protect elections are going to be vitally important moving forward. I'm going to be a big part of that on the legal front. Others will be part of it in the campaign front. Democracy Docket, the news outlet I have, and you will be, in these videos we do, will be part of it in the information and the media space. And we all just need to make sure we are doing everything we can to protect free and fair elections.
So I'm going to have two asks for the people who are watching right now. First is, to Marc's exact point, we have that election coming up on Tuesday in Wisconsin. If you have any friends, any family, any colleagues, coworkers, neighbors, whatever it may be, relatives or who go to school there, if you have anybody who can vote in the state Supreme Court election in Wisconsin, please make sure they exercise their right to vote. This is not just important in terms of making sure that the court stays liberal there, and that our fair maps get protected, and that abortion protections remain protected so that 1849 abortion law doesn't go into effect. But this is their test case right now for Elon Musk to be able to say, okay, look, I spent a boatload of money in Wisconsin. Now I can export this strategy to every other state in the country. He's absolutely looking at whether or not he's successful in Wisconsin to be able to do that. So whether or not, regardless of whether you're a Republican, an independent, or a Democrat, if you don't think it's a good idea for a billionaire to be able to literally purchase seats in the United States of America, this would be a good election to exercise your voice in. And the second point that I wanted to bring up is, given the work that Marc and his team are doing in the courts, his is exactly the kind of voice that you want to elevate. And a small step that we can all take to be able to do that is to sign up for Democracy Docket, which is the news outlet he founded to focus on everything voting in elections, and to focus on it in a way that is fearless, very much in contrast to what the legacy media is doing and the extent to which they are dropping the ball. So I'll put the link right up here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. If you're not yet signed up, please do yourself a favor and sign up. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Marc Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.